The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
The largest comeback in team history.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast.
What a win. What a wild comeback for the Pelicans. 123-119. Take a bow, CJ McCollum. He was awesome in this game. There's no getting around it. CJ McCollum was freaking awesome. You might not like him. Don't matter right now. He was fantastic in this game. 45 points on 18 of 31 shooting. I want you to think about this. 45 points on 31 shot attempts is insanely good. Only got to the line 4 times. Normally when you have that kind of efficiency, it's really boosted up by really good free throw numbers. 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks for CJ McCollum in this one, just 2 turnovers. He was awesome. On a night where the starters looked real bad, getting down 25 in this game, CJ was the lone guy that brought it on a night when the Pelicans looked like they were lifeless. They were listless. We'll talk about that in the third segment of WTF happened for the Pelicans to get down by 25 to an actively tanking Utah Jazz team in the first place. But CJ was on a heater, and he's been on a heater recently. 45 points tonight. Don't forget, he had a 50-point game earlier in the year. Earlier this month. He has been leading this team consistently since the Pelicans have started getting better. We talk about the Zion effect, and I think that's a very real thing. We talked about it, the Everydayers know, in yesterday's show. But CJ McCollum is not someone that we should forget about here because he has been flat out awesome for the Pelicans. And there's a reason now that they're 7-3 in their last 10 games. He's been playing. Zion didn't play in this one, out with a non-COVID illness. That type of performance is kind of eye-opening for a number of reasons, and thus it creates the first problem for New Orleans. They're 7-3 in their last 10. We don't want that. Honestly, as much as I like winning and I want him to win, and I want him to get a couple of wins here and there, we went over it in Friday's show or last week's show for the Everydayers. They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, but they may as well be. At this point, they need to go 29-9 the rest of the way just to get 500 and have a chance at the 10th seed, and that might not even get you there. But by winning these games, 4 in a row now, they're hurting their draft stock, their draft positioning. That's not great. In my opinion, this is a 4-player draft. Well, they've got the 4th worst record right now, so they're still kind of in there, but this is one of those things where, you know, if it goes horribly wrong in the lottery, you could drop to 8. That's not a great position to be in. When they were down 25 points to the Utah Jazz, a Utah Jazz team that's going to actively try and lose, and is a team you're kind of competing with for one of those top draft picks, maybe let them win. I don't know. Maybe let them win. You know, if you can't make the playoffs going forward, finishing just outside that, and giving you the worst lottery odds versus better lottery odds is a little bit detrimental to the future of this franchise. At this point, you need to be prioritizing next season, not just having the best record you can this season. We'll talk more about this with Ingram. We'll talk more about this with Willie Green in the future too, but they need to start prioritizing that, and you're starting to see some organizational misalignment here. Ownership wants one thing, David Griffin wants one thing, Willie Green wants another thing, and they're not in line here. There's kinks in that chain of command and all of that, and it's not a great position to be in. CJ is so good that he can get you wins single-handedly like he did in this game. Look, the 3-point shooting was awesome. You saw his crafty veteran moves of driving to the basket, finishing with those layups, getting the floaters that he needs. And look, the best play, well, not the best play, but one of the best plays was late in the game where in overtime where he just kicked it. I think I just got the alert that it's like literally snowing in New Orleans when I recorded that. So if you saw me look at my phone, I think it was that. It was when late in the game on almost the game winner, Pel's up 1, he drives and attacks the basket. It's taken away and he kicks the ball to a wide open Trey Murphy who drains a corner 3, and that was the dagger and all she wrote. His play to just look up, find Trey, get him an assist there, and win the game was truly impressive. He was just flat out awesome in this game and brought energy on a night that the Pelicans just did not have it whatsoever until far too late. And they're lucky they were playing the Utah Jazz because otherwise you don't win this game. So you don't need wins, and CJ is going to help you get these wins. Honestly, it's a bit of a problem, in my opinion. We'll talk more about the organizational misalignment, in my opinion, in the future, but it's a massive comeback. Look, it was fun. It was fun. Winning games is fun, and again, it shows you a glimpse against a tanking Utah Jazz team. Take that for what it's worth, but those guys aren't tanking. The players on the court aren't tanking. Isaiah Collier isn't tanking. Keontae George isn't tanking. Walker Kessler sure as heck wasn't tanking. None of those guys are tanking. The organization might be by not playing certain guys, but the players aren't. That's worth keeping in mind when it comes to this. Players never care about that sort of thing. They don't want a high draft pick for the Utah Jazz because they don't want someone to get drafted and then replace them. That's not a great position to be in here. So CJ went out and brought it against a team on a night that nobody else did, and he's been doing this consistently. He's been really, really good. And the first problem is, he's going to probably help this team win too many games, and maybe you don't end up with a top 4 pick. Maybe you finish with the 8th overall pick, whether it's dropping down in the lottery or just kind of being there anyway. Is that ideal? Is that good? I'm posing that it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but I'm posing it to you. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Do you want them winning games? Do you not? If you say they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then what do you want them to do? They're not going 29-9 the rest of the way just to get to 500, and even then you might miss the playoffs. Losing games seems to be in their best interest, and prioritizing the draft seems to be in their best interest. CJ McCollum's going to help them win games. Is that a problem? Is it not? You tell me in the comments down below. So let's keep talking about CJ McCollum. We'll get into the comeback win a little bit more and why they were down 25 points in the third segment here, but I want to look at how CJ's recent performances, and particularly this win too, creates multiple problems for the New Orleans Pelicans. Maybe they're not problems. It depends on the angle that you're taking with it, but they're kind of problems in my opinion. We just talked about it's going to help them win games. They won this one in a game that, look, you're competing with that team to lose. And the Utah Jazz just outlost you? Is that a way to put it? So let me pose another question here with how well he's playing, and in particular, how well he's been shooting in January. And three-point shooting is massively important for this team, right? We know that they took 42 threes in this. They're getting that 40 number plus pretty regularly, even with Zion out there a little bit, which is not something that I really thought that they would be doing. But CJ is playing well. He's facilitating, he's shooting, he's kind of doing everything you really want to see from him. Just playing regularly, all of those things. You know, at this point, after a sluggish start to the year, he'll be above it now, 37.2% from 3. He's making over 3 threes per game. That's worth keeping in mind, I think. He's playing really good basketball. For a team that needs shooting around Zion Williamson, are you going to find better than CJ McCollum? Look, his age is a factor. He's 33 years old. And what I mean future is he on the team next season? Is he on the team 2 seasons from now in some capacity? And I think that's a little bit of more of an open question. You know, if someone comes in and makes you an all right offer for CJ McCollum, gets you some tax relief, say for next year or this year, helps you fix some of the salary cap a little bit, would you take it or do you not take it? He's making $30.6 million next season. You could extend him after that, and he won't be making anywhere near that kind of money. So is he part of the future? And if you do keep him, does it then still complicate your books? They're going to be in a bit of a cap crunch again next season with Trey Murphy's extension kicking in. Can you have CJ McCollum on the roster next season? Can you afford to not have him on the roster next season with the type of shooting that he brings, the professionalism that he brings to the team too, just leadership in general? I don't necessarily have the answer to that, but the way he's playing right now, I want him out there alongside Zion Williamson if you're going to win games this season. If that's what they're going to do, look, get these two reps together and build for the future. You can still plan for the future while winning games and hurting your draft position, even if that's not what I would recommend doing. So is he part of the future? And let me kind of tie it into this too. If Brandon Ingram comes back and plays, and somehow plays games for the team the rest of the way, I don't know that he will. We'll talk more about that in tomorrow's show. Does CJ continue to start? You're going to have probably 3-4 starters guaranteed before Ingram comes back. DeJounte Murray's going to be in there. Zion Williamson's going to be in there. Trey Murphy sure as heck better be starting. And then you would imagine they're going to go with a center. So Yves Missi, Daniel, whoever it is, right? A center. then it's CJ or Ingram. If Ingram's not part of the future, do you actually put CJ on the bench? I don't think you should do that. If you think your starting lineup next season might be Murray, McCollum, Trey, Zion, a center, Misi, shouldn't you be playing those guys this year? Can you start CJ and Ingram in some capacity going forward? And I think the answer to that is probably no. They better not take Trey out. We will riot on the show if they take Trey Murphy III out of the starting lineup. So what do you do with that? It's a problem. It's an absolute problem. I struggle to imagine a world where they don't start Brandon Ingram if he's capable of playing for this team or if he wants to play for this team. If Ingram's here, I just don't see a world where he doesn't start, right? Like that's kind of how that feels and figures it would be. So what do you then do? If you're trying to build towards the future and win games, we don't want them to necessarily do that. You still probably need to start CJ, right? But then it gets you, if that's going to be your starting lineup this year, get it a bunch of run. But then also they're going to win games. And it goes back to what we just talked about in the first segment here. It's hard managing a franchise, y'all. You can hear it with some of the questions that we're talking about here. Like this isn't easy to figure out and to do, is it? Like it's difficult trying to kind of put all of this stuff together and figure out what works and what doesn't. And that's where this creates problems for the team. Who starts, right? If you start Ingram, look, I get it. But is CJ then going to be upset if you bring him to the bench with how well he's been playing? Like the answer to that's probably yeah. Now he'll do it. He's a professional. He won't complain and all of that stuff. But still, that doesn't seem like it's going to be a great situation for the franchise at all. If Ingram's not part of the future, should you bring him off the bench? But does that then create some issues there too? How do you manage all of this? That's going to be on, Willie Green. It's going to be on the front office to some extent too.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of the most fun evenings this year was me and my wife getting a chance to go out. The excitement, the energy, it's unforgettable. It's unmistakable. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Very important week for the Golden State Warriors begins with a 40-point defeat.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Without Draymond Green, without Jonathan Kuminga, both of whom could be missing extended time from this point on, it does not look good against a Boston Celtics team that, frankly, have not been great as of late, have not even been above average. It's two teams that came into this game struggling. You're getting Boston at their healthiest. They had everyone out there. First time we saw Boston, Golden State actually defeated the Celtics. There was no Kristaps Porzingis. There was no Jaylen Brown. But unlike that first matchup, this is not Boston at their best. They have not been playing great basketball. They started 21-5 on the season. They're 8-8 since. Their points, their three-point shooting is down. It's just one of those mid-season lulls that you would imagine most teams that are championship contenders get into because they know that they're probably a lock for that 2, for that 3, whatever seed is giving them home court advantage in the first round. And Cleveland, is probably locked into that 1 seed. So they're just in that rut. Still a really good team, though. Unfortunately, with the Celtics having struggled lately, the Warriors have been much worse. Much worse. They began 12-3. They're 9-17. Now 9-18 since the points are down, 119-106, the shooting percentage down. And since November 23rd, that turning point, the large lead given up to the Spurs and San Antonio won the game against the Golden State Warriors. Since that moment, the Dubs are 26th in offense. They're 19th in defense. They're 23rd in pace. They've had Draymond missing games. They've had Curry missing games. Wiggins has been in and out of the lineup with personal reasons. No Kuminga No Brandon Pajemski. Now we got Kyle Anderson missing games for whatever his role means to this team. It's been ugly. It has not been fluid, to say the least, when it comes to the Warriors. Warriors offense was not fluid. I saw a message in the chat that basically said it wasn't the shooting as much as it was quality shots. Contested 27 footers while 4 other guys just stood there and watched. I mean, partly, yes. And biggest culprit of that was probably Curry forcing up things, because look at who else is around him on the floor. They weren't hitting their shots either. There was a point where the Warriors were missing every way possible. Peyton missed a layup. Wiggins missed a layup. Looney missed an uncontested layup. 3 uncontested layups in the first 6 minutes of the game. Steph Curry begins the game 1 for 3. As I mentioned, a lot of those were rushed. A lot of them were tough shots, but there were clean looks from Lindy, Wiggins, Dennis, Buddy, Moody. They all missed open ones to start, and there were a lot of misses. The Warriors started 1 of 14 from 3-point range. To make matters worse, the right thumb was bothering Steph Curry. You could see him on the broadcast playing with that thing, wincing a little bit. Clearly, it's somewhat of an issue. Will it force him to miss time? The game before, we thought he may miss time due to that toe. So, I mean, it's just always something different for a 36-year-old. That is life. Father Time is undefeated. In order to stay on the floor for a full season and be an Iron Man, you don't have to do anything. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to get lucky. It's tough. Steph's taking care of his body. There's not much more he can do aside from finding some elixir, some fountain of youth, which unfortunately is not out there unless you find Indiana Jones. Then take me with him. And don't choose the gold chalice with all the diamonds. Those that know, choose the meager one. But Curry was a +2, or the Warriors rather, a +2 with Curry on the floor in the first half, a -17 without. There's your difference. Warriors were hanging around with the Celtics entering the end of the first quarter, and then it was ended up being a 17-1 run for Boston in 3 minutes without Steph on the floor. There's your ball game. To make matters worse, Andrew Wiggins had been scoring 20+ in his last 3 games. Wiggs was coming off a 30-point performance. He was 0 of 7 in the first half with 2 points. With 4 missing contributors, and 2 of them massive ones, and Jonathan Kuminga and Draymond Green, you can't have Andrew Wiggins going 0 of 7. He has to be playing out of his mind for Golden State to have any chance to take down the Boston Celtics. He was not good today, and it's why the Warriors were down 15 at half. This is just life right now. Draymond could miss multiple games with calf issues, and the Warriors need Jonathan Kuminga back. It's as simple as that. Boston was getting offensive rebounds early. They're tough. They're better than Golden State. There's not a lot to say aside from they are better than Golden State. They're set up better than Golden State for the foreseeable future. Such is life. 21-22 was fun, though. We got that one. Drew Holiday, man, so tough. And remind me to get back to Drew Holiday in just a little bit, because he brings up an important case study that we're going to have on today's show about making trades. Also in the notes, Porzingis is huge, hangs around the perimeter a little too much, but he does shoot at 38% from 3. And there was a point there in the second half, and really even the starting lineup, where the Warriors are just so damn small. The roster construction, there's not a lot you can do about it. You say, Steve Kerr, play bigger lineups, like look up and down. There's only so much that he can do with 3, 6, 7+ guys out today, and Anderson, Green, and Kuminga. But the starting lineup was a thing of beauty. And I have a smile on my face, a little bit of sarcasm. It was Steph, it was Dennis, it was GP2, it was Wiggins at the 4, it was Trace Jackson Davis at the 5. And there were multiple times where you saw switches to where Curry's down on the block guarding Porzingis. And Porzingis is a massive human being. Until you see him not on a highlight, you forget how huge he truly is. A big 7 feet. And he killed him today. Tatum had 22, 9, and 7. He killed him. Porzingis 18 and 7. Hit a trifecta of 3-pointers. Drew Holiday had 10. Jaylen Brown had 17, 11 for Sam Hauser. 14 for Peyton Pritchard. They scored 125 points. They shot at 41% from deep, did the Celtics, and 53% from the floor. The only thing you could counter that effort with tonight was an incredible shooting performance. One of those 50, 50, 80 nights that the Warriors get from time to time, where they shoot at 50% from the floor, 50% from deep, and they did not get that. They got 34, 26, 63. 14 of 53 from three-point range. 3 of those were from Moses Moody, and a couple of those were from, or one of those was from Quentin Post, who scored a career-high 9 points in the game today. We'll get into that in just a little bit, but that is where we stand with the Golden State Warriors right now. Boston gets the kill shot in the first half. They get another kill shot in the second half. This is one of those games that wants to make you drink. Unfortunately, the best that we could do was A&W zero sugar root beer. That's all we had. And unfortunately, we're going to need something stronger than that. Give me some caffeine. Give me something. That was a thing of not beauty. Not beauty. You watch that instead of the college football national championship pregame shows. No, it's still probably better than that, realistically. But anyways, Boston's better right now. Tiny dubs. What can you do? What can you do?
From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. And the FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. The AFC Championship, Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen. Allen got the best of this matchup during the regular season, but FanDuel has opened the line in favor of Mahomes. What else is new? The Chiefs, 1.5 point edge over the Bills right now, which means our friends at FanDuel see this one as essentially a coin flip with the Chiefs getting home field advantage. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This game was tough against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Memphis Grizzlies came out on top.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast.
It was a big win for the Grizzlies on Martin Luther King Day, the 23rd annual MLK Day game for the Grizzlies. It was a great event altogether. The symposium, talked to my colleagues about it. Seemed like it was a very good event. Tommy Smith, Cheryl Miller, Amari Stoudemire. They also were honored before the game. Terrific ceremony. Enjoyed, reading and seeing, what they had to say, as well. But then it was time to play basketball. Jaren Jackson Jr. came out. He did the little speech before the game, and then the ball tipped off. And as this game unfolded, and as I was watching this game, and you look at the first quarter, you look at the second quarter, and you look at the Timberwolves being up 16 points, and you look at them leading pretty much the entire third quarter. And you know what I started saying? So it's going to take some toughness to win this game. This is one of those games, like we keep talking about the Grizzlies having to prove against some of those tougher teams that kind of give them the tough matchups. When they play some of what I like to think of the more finesse type teams, Grizzlies will run through them all. They'll run through them all. It's those teams that try to make the game gritty, that take the Grizzlies, out from being able to play at their pace and things like that. And it's these lower scoring games that have given them trouble. But in this case, Memphis came out victorious. Memphis was the tougher team, at the end of the day. And they battled and they grinded for this win against the Minnesota Timberwolves. A lot of things to take back from this game. That is the number one thing for me. We've talked a lot about what is it going to look like for them beating a physical team. And you may say, what is a physical team? Because there's no, you don't just put a patch on a team and say you're a physical team. What makes teams really the most physical teams? I think it's more eye test stuff to me. You could look at the defensive numbers. But it's eye test. I think the most physical teams are the teams, with a bunch of really good defenders, They're not going to give you anything easy. They're going to make you work for it. And if you want a pretty much a simple definition for it, it's the teams that probably make you complain for fouls the most. Like at the end of the day, if you look back over the course of this season, and I'm not saying anything was justifiable or not, because look, we talked about it on here. We talked about the last 2-minute reports where the Grizzlies have kind of they've got the tough end in a few games when it comes to officiating. But with all that being said, if you look at most of the times the Grizzlies have complained, or you felt probably that they didn't get an unfair shake, it was against those more physical teams. They kind of pushed the barometers of the referees. They kind of pushed the envelope a little bit. And it's the Houstons of the world. They're going to tuck your jerseys. They're going to, pull your jerseys a little bit. It's the Timberwolves. We saw Anthony Edwards, basically forcing the referees to call some fouls between the physicality himself and Jalen Wells over the course of this game. And then it's the other teams as well. It's the, the Clippers. They like to pull. They're going to pull on your jersey. They're going to play a little physical brand of basketball. They're going to let you know they're there. Same thing with the Lakers, etc. Teams that the Grizzlies have pretty much struggled against. In this case, the Timberwolves came out with, I thought, a strong defensive game plan in how they wanted to match up against the Grizzlies. They put Anthony Edwards on Ja Morant. Usually we see Jaden McDaniels is the one that guards Ja Morant. And both of them, we're just keeping it a buck here. That's what we do on Locked On Grizzlies. Both of them tend to do a really good job against Ja in terms of not allowing him to completely dominate and take over the entire game like he's capable of doing against some other teams. But Minnesota, they have the athleticism, they have the size. So Anthony Edwards, you lose a couple inches in height, going from Jaden McDaniels, 6'9", 6'10", to Anthony Edwards, who's 6'5", 6'6". So you lose a few inches in height there. But, Anthony Edwards is a great athlete. He's physical. So he made things tough for Ja. And what they did was they put Jaden McDaniels, on Desmond Bane. And Desmond Bane still got his buckets. Desmond Bane, we're going to talk about him a little bit. But he still got his buckets. And the Grizzlies, of course, Jaren Jackson Jr. was guarded by Julius Randle. And Jaren can score on anybody. If you ask me, it's just a make or miss thing with him at this point. We'll talk about him a little bit more in the next segment. But that was kind of part of what went on for the Grizzlies, what they had to overcome from the physicality of the Timberwolves. There was also the free throw battle in this game, with Anthony Edwards. Look, I'm never in I really don't like watching games where it feels like there's a whistle every other play. And at times, that was this game. But you know what? Ja Morant got 13 free throws attempts. Anthony Edwards got 18. And I know, Anthony Edwards ended up shooting 8 of 19 from the field. He was very effective from that. I think Naz Reid and Anthony Edwards had combined for 61 points, for the Timberwolves in this game. And they only scored a 106. So outside of those two, they got Robert Dillingham, who came in with 15 off the bench, gave them a nice boost. But outside of that, the Timberwolves didn't get much scoring, from other places. Mike Conley had 5 points. I think Jaden McDaniels had 11 for them. He had 12 boards. But overall, the Grizzlies, 22 points from Des Bane, 19.7 assists from Ja Morant. You got 13 points from Jalen Wells. It was pretty much the starters who did most of the work for the Grizzlies. So, again, this is a big win if you ask me, because Ja Morant did not have his best in this game. Jaren Jackson Jr. was in foul trouble, even though he finished the game with 24 points. Desmond Bane was steady Eddie for you, 22 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists for Desmond Bane, in this game, along with shooting, 7 of 14 from the field. So this was a game that the starters won, without a doubt. Zach Edey didn't have his best night. 2 points for him, seven rebounds, but we'll talk about it more extensively in a different episode. But I have some more takeaways in terms of Zach Edey and how he's being used. And two shot attempts for Zach Edey. I'm not really feeling it, but with the way that the Grizzlies are playing right now, that's kind of what it's going to be. We'll get more into that, at a later time. All in all, this was a really good win for Memphis. I thought, all things considered, with the fouls and whatnot, Jalen Wells did a good job of irritating Anthony Edwards enough, and the Grizzlies did what they were supposed to do. They closed the game out. Look, early on in the season, the Grizzlies were blowing out all those teams, the Eastern Conference teams, and I kept saying, we still don't know what this team is in the clutch. We have not seen it enough, and the Grizzlies had games coming up to this one, a few games, the Houston games where they lost, both of those games, and there were a couple plays that went the other way against them. The Timberwolves game, they won that one. The last one before this one, they beat the Timberwolves on the road, 127, 125. I think the score was a 129, 167, excuse me. They've had a few close calls on the road in recent games because they've been playing more Western Conference teams. So all of that was building up to this game, in my opinion, where we're going to talk about it in a second here with Jaren Jackson Jr. But the Grizzlies they showed in this game that they can close out some games, which has been a problem. This was a really good defense. I mean, the Grizzlies didn't have a lot of built-in advantages against this Timberwolves defense. The Grizzlies are athletic. The Timberwolves have a lot of athleticism. The Grizzlies like to get to the paint. This team has a lot of length in terms of limiting your ability to score in the paint. The Grizzlies still were able to get 54 paint points. And again, this was a big night from the starters. The starters did most of this work, led by the one and only Jaren Jackson Jr., who had a big fourth quarter.